This video presents instructions on how to install the universal fifth wheel truck rack manufactured by US Rack. This rack mounts to the bed rails of any pickup truck with stake pockets and extends over the truck cab to provide a platform for long or bulky cargo such as canoes, kayaks, and bicycles. It works with fifth wheel RV trailers and allows the truck and rack to turn freely without interfering with the trailer. Use this video to follow step by step your written instructions dated 5 November 2017 or later. Carefully read the written specifications and safe loading requirements and the warranty. Then examine the inventory list. Unwrap and examine each part and compare it with the inventory list. If you find any cracked, broken, or otherwise defective parts, are missing any parts, or have any installation questions, contact US Rack at the toll-free number. We are here to help. To make installation and later disassembly a little easier, ensure that each screw and bolt has a small dab of grease from the little tube in the installation kit. This photo points out the bed rail of the truck, which supports the weight of the truck rack and contains stake pockets. There are 3 stake pockets in each bed rail of this long bed truck. The rack mounts into the front too. Short bed trucks have only 2 stake pockets. The first step is to prepare the stake pocket inserts for installation into the front and into the second stake pocket on each bed rail. Disassemble each insert into its components as shown, and notice the 3 diamond-shaped holes in one end of the insert that will be used to install a carriage bolt. These holes provide a choice of positions on where each bolt will emerge from the stake pocket to anchor the rack to the truck bed rail. Screw a jam nut, which is the thinnest of the nuts, all the way down on the bolt to hold it in place. Holding the insert by the bolt, lower it into the stake pocket so the top of the nut is just below the top of the bed rail. You may mark the insert with a pencil through the hole that leads from the bed into the side of the stake pocket. Remove the insert and install a bolt at the location you marked and hold it in place with a thin retaining washer. Place the insert back down into the stake pocket so this bolt extends through the side hole, and place a 1.5 inch washer on the bolt and loosely thread on a nylon lock nut. Pull up on the insert to make sure the top of the jam nut remains about 1/4 inch below the bed rail when upward force is applied. Then tighten the nylon lock nut firmly. Note that even after applying a dab of grease on the screw, you must overcome the resistance of breaking through the nylon ring on each lock nut to fully tighten it. Install all 4 inserts so they appear as shown here. Next, install the base rails B from the inventory list and the extensions C shown here. Notice that the extension is narrower than the base rail and sits down inside of it. Place a base rail on the bed rail so the front of the base rail is about even with the front of the bed rail, and so the stake pocket insert bolt goes up through one of the many holes in the base rail. The variety of holes in the base rail provides choices on how far from the edge of the bed rail the base rail will sit. Adjust the extension so the bolt extending up from the front stake pocket also goes through one of the large rectangular holes at the front of the extension, and so the bolt in the second stake pocket goes up through one of the holes in the other end of the extension. A hold-down plate will be required to cover the large rectangular holes in the extension. To secure parts in position, place a hold-down plate on each bolt, then add a metal washer and tighten loosely with a nylon lock nut. With some trucks, the distance between the stake pockets is longer than the extension. This requires the use of elevator bolts to convert the base rail and extension into one rigid assembly that can span both pockets. See how the parts are locked together using the elevator bolts, hold-down plates, washers, and nuts. Next, install a crossbar D on the inventory list to the 2 stanchions G. To initially orient these parts, place them on the ground as shown, and notice that the 2 crossbar gussets are welded to the front of the crossbar. Stand up the stanchions and align the threaded studs on the inside with the holes in the crossbar gussets. Slide the parts together and place metal washers on the studs. Thread nylon lock nuts onto the studs and tighten loosely. To mount the stanchion and crossbar assembly, step up into the bed and slide the bottoms of the stanchions down between the sides of the stanchion housings, which are welded to the front of each base rail. Lower the assembly down to where the bottom of the crossbar is 3 to 4 inches above the roof of the cab, while aligning the holes in the stanchions with the slots in the housings. To find the right position, it may be necessary to move the base rails closer together or farther apart, by adjusting which holes in the bottom of the base rails the stake pocket insert bolts go through, or by moving the positions of the bolts in the inserts themselves. When the height and width is correct, insert 1-inch long carriage bolts into both sides of the stanchion housings to intercept and hold the stanchions in place. Tighten them, but not too firmly. Important note: there must be an overlap of at least 2 rows of holes and slots, with at least 3 carriage bolts holding the parts to the front and back of the stanchion housings. For maximum stability, ensure that the bolts are spread out as much as possible in the available overlapping holes and slots. Next, attach the side rails A and cab cushions F. Notice that each side rail contains a mounting bracket for the cab cushion. The cab cushion has a number of parts and tools needed to assemble it. There are 2 lengths of carriage bolts. Initially, use only the short 1.5-inch long carriage bolts. Slide them into the ends of the black extruded aluminum body of the cab cushion and pull the black nylon cover up around the bolts and slide on the plastic end caps until they make contact with the bolt. Push a rubber washer onto the end of the bolt. This is a tight fit. Place an 1.25-inch OD metal washer on top. These washers will hold the nylon cover and end caps in place. Slide the ends of the bolts into the slots of the mounting bracket. Add small washers and screw on the lock nuts. Screw down each nut far enough to retain the cab cushion in the bracket, but don't yet firmly tighten, for you may have to remove and adjust them later. To install the side rails over the truck cab, insert the threaded ends of the rails into the tubes extending from the front of the stanchions while ensuring that the cab cushions are on the inside of the rails. Place a black nylon washer onto a 3/8 by 1 3/4-inch long button head cap screw. Insert the screw into the lower hole at the back of the stanchion until it contacts the end of the side rail. Thread it in to the back of the side rail a few turns, but leave it loose. Insert the larger fine thread hex screw with a metal washer into the top hole to intercept the threaded end of the other tube and thread it in a few turns. Now tighten the lower screw firmly with the Allen wrench. Tighten the upper screw with a hex wrench. Note that this screw is used to adjust the elevation of the side rail, so don't tighten it more than is necessary to make the side rails roughly parallel to the ground. The photo on the left shows a small gap between the bottom of the cab cushion and the roof of the cab when the rack is unloaded. The right one shows that when the rack is loaded, the cab cushion should rest lightly on the cab. If you need more or less space over the cab, you may first try to tighten or loosen the hex nut in the back of the stanchion. If you still need to raise the cushion more, you should raise the stanchions to a higher position in the stanchion housing. If you want less gap above the cab, you may lower the cab cushions by about 1/2 inch by adding a nylon lock nut and washer to the carriage bolts of the cab cushion just below the mounting bracket. If this is still insufficient to bring the cab cushions down to the proper position over the cab, replace the 1.5-inch bolts with 2.5-inch bolts and add another lock nut below the mounting bracket. Note that the space between the 2 lock nuts can be adjusted to create more or less standoff above the cab. If there is still too much space, remove the bolts and lower the stanchion to lower slots in the stanchion housing. Next, install the front crossbar E in the inventory. Holding the crossbar with the flat spoiler on the bottom, insert the ends of the crossbar into the front of the side rails and shove them almost all the way into the side rails. Squeeze a modest amount of flexible caulk around the perimeter of the smaller tube to keep water out of the tubes. Then shove them all the way in until the holes in the bottom side of the crossbars and the side rails align. Place a black nylon washer onto an 1.5-inch long button head cap screw and tighten firmly with the Allen wrench, then wipe off any excess caulk. The universal 5th wheel rack may be used without the optional movable crossbars, but if you have ordered them, they will make mounting sports accessories much easier, and you will have the additional parts outlined in red shown at the bottom of Figure 1 and shown more closely here. The 59-inch long and the 78-inch long movable crossbars install in the same way. Insert the heads of 2 5/16-inch carriage bolts into each end of the movable crossbars I and replace the plastic caps. Place the movable bars on top of or below either the larger or smaller tubes of the side rails in a convenient location along the rail. After the bars are positioned, attach the mounting brackets by running the ends of the screws through the holes. Add a metal washer and a nylon lock nut to each bolt and tighten until the brackets wrap securely around the tubes. The movable crossbars can be hung below or mounted on top of the side rails as shown here. They can also be attached to either the top or bottom tubes of the side rails and positioned anywhere along the rails that is convenient to carry many types of cargo. When installation is completed, it is critical that you check the alignment of all the parts and tighten all fasteners firmly, but not so firmly that you strip, damage, or deform fasteners or other parts. Periodically check the tightness of all fasteners to ensure that none has loosened. Now you are ready to mount your cargo and head to high adventure.